Welcome back, attractive and well-educated watchers. For those who haven't been paying attention, we're a farmer. As a farmer, our specialty is animals, and on animals, our big personal focus is using them to take care of problems that otherwise would require either technological or human input. We have too many blackberries, so instead of spending the energy and gas to clear things out ourselves, we got a couple of goats to eat the brambles for us. We need eggs, so we get chickens. We can't chase those goats and chickens around all day because we have things to do, so we got a couple of dogs to herd them instead. We need to fertilize the now cleared out bramble areas, so we have rabbits to make manure. We have kitchen scraps, so we don't have to buy feed for some of our birds, and because we have those birds, we produce less waste in the form of kitchen scraps. Dump runs become cheaper. The list goes on. Right now, our world is set upon by various forms of pollution, liquid, solid, and gaseous. We all know this already. We all see the litter. We all acknowledge the landfills. We all admit that the world is a dirty place. Is there an animal-based solution to this? Can we fix these problems, not only with animals, but with old-fashioned methods that we've foolishly left behind in our march toward progress? Certainly not all of it, but some of it, yes. And that's what we're here to talk about today. An animal solution-based policy to a modern technological problem. Plastic recycling, to date, has been a hilarious failure. We have tons of pollution floating around in our seas, animals choking on plastic bags, random toys and junk and other plasticky bits in our gardens and waterways, clogging up the works of the entire planet. Due to corporate negligence, the responsibility to pick up after this has been foisted onto the consumer, despite the fact that the companies are working harder than ever to push forward with their environmentally unsound ways. They are more than happy to deny responsibility so as to profit in this fiscal quarter than to acknowledge that they are making life more difficult for everyone else in the whole wide world over the long term. Now, we're in a devastating situation here, and people are constantly trying to find solutions to it. And of course, who is going to pay for these solutions? It is just as important to those with the power to change things that this is as affordable as it is possible. So let's consider an animal solution that is also as cheap as we can get. Obviously, any animal that would fix our plastic problems would have to be so cheap to care for that it would require little more than organic garbage to feed. Enter the darkling beetle, or what most people know them better as, the mealworm. The larval form of the darkling beetle, the mealworm is known the world over as quality protein supplements and enrichment for various animals from poultry to pet reptiles. It's a simple animal with a lot of fun little secrets, and thanks to Dr. Anya Malawi Brandon, we know that mealworms can eat polystyrene and polyethylene. These are two of the most common plastics in the entire world, and ultimately would make a huge portion of the plastic we have floating around mucking up the works. According to her studies, a large portion of the plastic eaten by mealworms comes out as carbon dioxide, and mostly degraded plastics. And we imagine, through a few more cycles of digesting using special enzymes and bacteria these little bugs have in their guts, those plastics could be completely cycled out into organic materials. It has also been determined that mealworms do not hold on to the plastics, and so do not pass plastic up the food chain. That means once they grow up and breed, they can thereafter be killed via deep freeze and then sold to the pet industry as completely safe treats for any animal that likes them. The problem is scale. According to Dr. Brandon, on average, 100 mealworms can eat 20 to 30 milligrams of plastic in a single day. According to her, that means it would take more than, quote, 1 quadrillion mealworms, unquote, to eat all of our plastic production, the world over, in a single day. She says we simply don't have enough mealworms, and perhaps that's true. For now. But we still want to consider it, especially when we think about the quick generations that mealworms go through. One might be able to make legitimate progress with these little things in one human lifetime. Can we raise that number to 50 milligrams of plastic a day per 100 mealworms? Could we hypothetically go even further and breed a super plastic-starved mealworm that eats up to 1 milligram a day by itself? We couldn't say right now, but we'll be sure to try to reach out to Dr. Brandon for further input if we can. Regardless, let's consider some numbers. An average mealworm is roughly 2.5 centimeters long and weighs around 100 milligrams, according to some very basic Googling. 10 mealworms then makes a single gram, and 10,000 mealworms makes a kilogram. These are extremely easy numbers to work with. A quadrillion mealworms therefore weighs roughly 100 billion kilograms. Alright, we have a number. We just need to find a way to breed and store roughly 100 billion kilograms of mealworms and have them ready and available for all of the world's plastic garbage at any given point in time. Forever. That's roughly 220 billion pounds of mealworms, or about 157.5 times as much as is held within the US cheese caves. Okay, we know first and foremost that this is a lot of worms. In fact, it's more than a lot of worms. It's a fairly terrifying amount of worms. A comical amount of worms, if we may. So it might be fair to assume that Dr. Brandon might possibly, perhaps, maybe, potentially be right from a certain point of view that it is indeed too many worms to manage. But we are a farmer, and we aim for animal-based solutions. Bacterium bioforge technology will take too long, and we are too poor. So we have to stay on this course. There is nothing else we can consider at this junction. The world needs us. Fortunately, mealworms have no problem being poured into gigantic vats and just living there, so we can assume, at the very least, that we can store most of these larvae in gigantic deep dish metal or glass vats or trays. Obviously, they can eat plastic, so such containers are out of the question, but we imagine everything else from glass to metal to concrete will work. Put whatever you want in your brain that you find acceptable. Standard guides say that substrate should be no more than 8 inches deep for a mealworm farm, and we will assume that roughly half of the space in any given area is made of substrate to account for letting those disgusting little bugs wiggle around. Since we only need 8-inch deep substrate, we'll start working our mealworm farms in columns and rows. You see, a shelf may only need to be 12 inches of vertical space before the next one starts. Let's assume that our average shelf system is then 12 inches tall and proceeds off in any direction as far as we need. They can thereafter be slid out or vacuumed or whatever to manage things, all with a few inches to chuck plastic and food into whenever feeding time comes. So now we've got our vats, we have our trays, we have a system to store these hundreds of billions of mealworms. We also have a fairly terrifying amount of food garbage and yard debris produced every day all over the world. Assuming we could find a way of leveraging this instead of pouring it into our landfills, we could throw all of that food garbage into our giant mealworm vats, plastic wrappers and all. Leavings may then be mixed back into the next day's feed from there, and you could probably go up to 10 cycles of refeeding to harmlessly metabolize all plastic given to the worms as a whole. We can do this by gathering up all of the mealworm droppings and then blending them back up into food waste paste made from normal food scraps, which may then be fed to the next batch of worms to metabolize further whatever degraded plastic residues are left from the last feeding. This could potentially be further facilitated by different buildings representing different stages of plastic purification. The first building takes raw plastics, and the leavings from that building goes to the next building, whose droppings are then fed to an entirely new population of mealworms in the next building over within another cycle of plastic blended food pastes. After 10 cycles of this, the final mealworms in the last buildings on the chain basically never get much of any plastic at all in their diet, and their frass comes out completely organic. Obviously, this will be very closely monitored and tested to make sure all microplastics have been totally and completely digested before they enter the American market. However, the math and the science is stable. It works out. Once the manure is entirely cleaned of plastic residue through these numerous cycles of feeding blended pastes of plasticky frass and food waste, the final result may then be cycled into the fertilizer and soil market, either here in the US or shipped overseas. Darkling beetle females lay an average of around 500 eggs in their lifetime, so it would take a few generations to start really pumping them out. But they eat food garbage and plastic, so this isn't much of a problem with logistics, only a bit of a wait. So where would we put these beetles? We want to be truly environmental about this, so there's no reason to put them out in the open. They're worms. They do just fine in giant concrete vats underground. So let's consider places like old missile silos, underground bunkers, and old abandoned mines throughout the United States before we consider spending inordinate amounts of money to dig out giant pits in the middle of the United States Southwest. You will find that there is, contrary to what you might immediately think, far more space than you could have imagined for this sort of project just squirreled away in the country's vast tracts of land. A plus to this underground existence is also that we can maintain the worm vats as a closed system. 50% of the plastic they consume becomes simple carbon dioxide, and even if they are doing a lot more good than harm for their work, if we put all of this underground, we can set up a ventilation system to gather up and sequester even that carbon for environmental purposes, to later be used for industrial processes that can help bolster our nation's economy far more than tariffs could ever dream. If nothing else, the US cheese caves, though much smaller than we need, are an excellent example that the government could and should maintain a huge underground complex for the sake of infrastructure and supply. But what sort of space would this deal with? Well, a single mealworm is roughly 2.5 centimeters long and roughly 5 millimeters or a half centimeter wide. This little cylinder takes up just under 2 cubic centimeters. That's right. Every mealworm is just under 2 cubic centimeters. We'll round up just for math. This means that our 1 quadrillion mealworms would not only be just 220 billion pounds, but also would take up roughly only 2 quadrillion cubic centimeters. We know. Math. It's a thing. This is, if you can believe it or not, only 2 billion cubic meters. That's only just over 150 Boeing Everett factories. The Boeing Everett factory has a floor space of just under 400,000 square meters, so we could place 3 of those in each state of the USA and altogether only take up just over 23 square miles of total floor space, out of 3.797 million square miles in the entirety of the United States of America. And those 23 square miles could be out in the middle of nowhere for all we care. Put them out in the Nevada desert or Utah. Nobody would notice. It's not like people want giant worm farms doubling as plastic recycling centers in their neighborhoods anyway. And underground installations are well insulated and will not require much in the way of heating or cooling, so that continues to save us money. Our point is that such gigantic places would require very little space, so long as we built vertically underground. So ask yourself this when you look at the next bit of plastic in your life. Is 24 square miles of underground floor space worth a healthier, cleaner world? Okay, we hear you. We're not going to be doing all of this super efficiently. Mealworms are not going to have their own individual perfect containment facilities exactly fit to their size with a meal tube force-feeding them plastic all hours of the day. That's fair. We're not going to do that. So let's just double the necessary cubic meterage, square footage, whatever. Let's just double it. 300 Boeing Everett factories, or rounded up around 50 square miles of floor space. That's still only 6 facilities or so per US state, or probably around 4 if we disperse them out to all of the available US territories where this would be practical. Strategically placed, of course. Remember also that this is not a plan for just America's plastic, but rather for the entire world's plastic. But why, we hear you ask, would we even bother with everyone else's plastic? Well, that's simple. It's because they'll pay us. Many nations around the world, especially island nations like Japan and the Philippines, have an extreme garbage problem right now. Very few people want their garbage, and that is leading to extremely bad pollution on the high seas. You want your tropical vacations to stay beautiful, right? Well, so do the tourist industries, and for a very small price per ton, we'll be more than happy to take the rest of the world's plastic and food garbage to feed our mealworms. People in the lower ranks of society have been fighting to make it even possible to clean up plastic for decades, while the big companies chuckle on and actively compete with each other to make even more waste. No president to this point has done anything but foist the responsibility of the people on the most vulnerable and poorest classes. It's time we, as a people, step up and demand our representatives do something about it, instead of telling us, down here in the roots of society, that we are the ones responsible for all the corporate destruction of our environment. If you want something done, you gotta do it yourself. And just because America could be plastic-free won't stop giant garbage islands from washing upon our shores. We can't rely on China or Russia or anywhere else to clean up their messes, even as their garbage washes up on our shores. So we'll have to show the world that America is truly the greatest nation by using up around 50 square miles of our nation's land to take care of everyone's garbage, because no one else will step up. Again, Once cycled through the mealworm gut many times over, such compost will be cycled back into the American farming system, enriching our fields and increasing our produce harvest at the expense of other nations. The beetles not carrying plastic with them up the food chain will also be cycled back in, sold both here and abroad to feed the poultry industries of the world. Finally, captured carbon from waste production within the vats could be used for industrial purposes that will further bring jobs to America, rather than letting them go overseas. And all of this for the price of concrete and light bulbs, electricity, and some moving trucks to get the scrap where it needs to go. Realistically speaking, this is a project that will very quickly pay itself off, as plastic is still being made all over the world at a feverish pace, and everyone on the planet needs a way to get rid of it. Our oceans need to be cleared of giant garbage islands that float around. Landfills could be gradually emptied of plastic, cleared of recyclables, and made into productive farmland. With considerably less waste worldwide, what non-degradable waste we do produce could be better disposed of and stored away in safe circumstances. Every day, we produce literal tons of plastic, and then throw it away into the waterways, fields, and forests of the planet. And that necessarily makes the world less pleasant and more difficult for everyone to live in. We are already throwing our garbage into nature and ruining it for everyone, including ourselves. But if we embrace this sort of animal-based solution, America could truly cement itself as the environmental, agricultural, economic, and infrastructural leviathan of the entire world. And don't get us wrong, it doesn't have to be the United States of America. Many countries have the space. It's just 50 square miles after all. But we're an American, so we want to put it out there to the American government that this idea is officially out there now. We don't know the money that would be involved, not sure what construction would need to take place or what the designs would look like, but the idea is in the air now. The math has been done. If our fellow Americans do not do it, then someone else will. So ask yourself these simple questions. Mull this over in your mind for as long as it takes, but not too long, lest someone else do it first. The questions stand. Are you willing to pay 50 square miles of U.S. floor space for the sake of making America the one nation in the world that has the solution to every other nation's plastic-based problems? Are you willing to make America the most important nation in the world to every other nation in the world? Is 50 square miles a fair price to make sure that your country is not thought of as the greatest country in the world, but known as the most important country in the world of waste management? Will you make that sacrifice? Is that too much to give? If you think that this is a fair price to pay for eternal plastic moderation around the world by America, then you want to vote progressive. You want to vote bullmoose. And when 2028 comes around and you get that ballot, you will want to vote David A. Gray for President of the United States of America. You want to stand strong and you want to stand together. Vote progressive. Vote bullmoose.